Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Zone Star State podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me once again is Ishmael Johnson on April 7th, the day of the national championship between Houston and Florida. Ish, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Because we ended the year with one team at least playing for a
Yes.
national title. I feel like if we would have went through the men's and women's season with neither side having a representative, it would have been massively disappointing. But we got it. Houston for the first time since 2021, I guess, for Baylor for the first time men or women playing for a national title. So we're finally here. Houston did it.
And real quick, before we get into the game, just how we got here. We don't have to spend 30 minutes on Houston Duke because we could.
Yeah, we really could.
30 minutes on Houston Duke. The Final Four game in the Alamo Dome was absolutely incredible. Just real quick summary. Duke kind of jumped out on Houston a little bit. It kind of looked like how we said it might go and how a lot of people thought it might go, where Duke just looked like incredible. Cooper Flagg looked like the best player on the court. Conk Nipple was really good. They were bigger, they're stronger. Houston struggled to score consistently on offense early on. And even into the second half, into what you would call the third quarter, Duke continued to kind of just pull away slowly. Houston, I don't even want to say hung in there because they went down 14 at one point.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah.
And I had a long weekend in Texas, and I was like, I don't think they're gonna do it. And I was about to pass out, and I text my friend like, if I go to sleep, wake me up. But then I never fell asleep, and I just watched the comeback in full, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're doing it. And then I slowly sit up in the bed, and lo and behold, they end up coming back. I don't even know. KenPom has the minimum win probability at 2.5% when they were down 7 with 2 minutes left. I think they were down 9 at a different point after Flagg hit that 3, and Houston comes all the way back and gets the win. Just an egregious, honestly, a loss, a choke from Duke to a degree, which we're not shocked by. I'll let you talk, but also Houston's resilience, Houston's toughness, Houston's culture, everything that we talk about, their will to win ends up getting it done in the end. And we saw this against Kansas on the road when they pulled that game out of their behinds, and we see it again in the Final Four against Duke. What an incredible win.
I mean, they don't die, right? Like, they just do not die. They do not lie down. Gary Parrish mentioned, I think he said, you can't have an epic comeback without kind of an epic collapse as well, right? Yeah. So they go hand in hand. But this is a summary. Matt Nordlander's column for CBS Sports. He mentioned this stat right here. And then there's this quote. This is from his column. The same Houston team that needed 8 minutes and 9 seconds to score its first 9 points of the game needed only 33 seconds in the end to outscore Duke 9-0 and win by 3. Like you mentioned it, this offense was not clicking, right? They were missing some shots early. They're typically a really good 3-point shooting team. I think they ended the night fine. I think they ended the night over 40, but they didn't start fine. And then when you look back at it with Duke, we talked about this. This was a young team, right? This is a young team, and every young team typically, unless you are, I guess Duke's last national title, which was that the Jahlil Okafor team, or did he win?
Yeah. Tyus Jones.
Unless you're that team, or the Anthony Davis Kentucky team, more often than not, a young team runs into a team that they just have been there before and that they've done everything, right? And you saw that with Duke, where it was they got up 14. It was now what? And the now what was they didn't have an answer. And I think one thing we've talked about coaching situations and coaching job. I mean, Kelvin Sampson outcoached John Shire in those last few minutes, right? There were certain things that, even down to literally the last possession, right? The fact that was Duke's last possession, they had almost 4 seconds left, and they just heave it to the other side, and they get everything down to that last draw up, where it was that's what you had, this was a team that was slicing Houston's defense that we hadn't seen this year in the half court, right? And then all of a sudden they're just taking bad shots. Luckily that Cooper Flagg hit that 3 later, they would have been probably even more. And you could say okay, you had the weird over the back. That probably wasn't an over the back on Cooper Flag, but
Yeah.
like that was one situation, right? They kind of got that back because JoJo Tugler had a weird technical where he touched the ball in the MS. So like they kind of got that call back anyway. In the end, you mentioned it. This is Houston, the culture, the grind. Juwan Roberts and LJ Cryer hitting the toughest free throws of their life, right? Juwan Roberts is a decent free throw shooter. He's not a great one. And so he went 2 for 2. Cryer went 2 for 2. And I mean, we're sitting here and like as this era, right? Because I mentioned that Houston's going to be fine regardless, but like this era, this Juwan Roberts, Cryer, Tugler, this team feels like the end of an era of Houston basketball. And it feels fitting that this team's going to get to play for a national title.
Yeah. Emmanuel Sharp, we had talked about him the past couple months about needing him to step up in some of these big games. He hit 3 threes, and he hit one of the biggest threes to, I think, initially cut it 2-3.
Yep.
Yeah, because then they trapped, got the steal. Wilson misses 3. Tugler put back dunk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Sharp. And look,
up.
I do want to mention a little bit more about what they did against Duke, right? Because you look at it, you're like, man, Duke was up 14. If we're being honest, Cooper Flag and Con Kneppel were beating Houston, right? This wasn't like a top to bottom. Duke was out. Like this was the two best players and probably the two highest draft picks. Two NBA players beating Houston at a certain point.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a good. Kaman Malawak, who's going to be a lottery pick, played horrendously, right? Like he had 6 points, no rebounds as a 7-footer playing against a team that does not have a guy that touches 7 feet, right?
Yeah.
Like they kept him in check. Tyrese Proctor, Sion J, like these guys weren't good in this game. It was two players really that were doing it all for Duke. They were good defensively at times, right? But offensively, this was two players, and Houston was able to hold those. I think they kind of realized that. I was like, hey, we're not letting the whole team get against us. Let's just shut these two guys down. Also, I didn't like the fact that they just said ISO Cooper Flag at the end of the game against Juwan Roberts. Like, you think Juwan Roberts is letting that guy get a good shot at the end of the game? Absolutely not. But I think I think at the end of the game, if they would have lost this game, we would have been like, man, they just couldn't handle Duke. But it really wasn't the case. They just couldn't handle two guys for a lot of that game. And yeah, I mean, in the end, they got it done.
Yeah. Lastly, they did it with Milos Uzan in foul trouble for a lot of it.
Yeah. They didn't need him in the last game, but he hasn't had the best stretch of last couple games.
Yeah. So we'll see if he turns it around against Florida. But great win for Houston. Very, very happy for them. Also happy always to see Duke lose. So 2 for 1 there. All right, Houston, Florida, the national championship Monday before we got on here, I was like, wow, it's at 7:50 Central Time. I forget how late these games are.
I know, right?
But that's perfect. Houston, this is the number 2 and 3 teams in KenPom now. And I do want to make note, both of these teams have had some of the hardest paths to a national title game that I can remember ever.
Yes.
We talked about Houston before, right? Gonzaga, Purdue, Tennessee, Duke.
Yep.
I mean, that's 4 top 15 teams in KenPom. That's 3 top 8 teams in KenPom right there.
There's conceivably a realistic bracket that probably had Florida as an underdog from like the second round on.
Dude, I
mean, there's conceivably some, but like probably like I wouldn't be surprised if it was like 60-40% had like 40% probably had like Florida probably losing at some point before the like Texas. Let me look. What was the path for Florida? Because obviously I had Houston losing to Gonzaga, but
Florida,
Maryland, UConn, Maryland, Texas Tech,
and then Auburn,
in the Final Four. Like all those teams, you could have realistically seen Florida losing to. They almost did lose to UConn. They only beat them by 2.
Yeah, the UConn game was like if UConn was a 7 seed and played a 2 seed instead of Florida, like I think UConn actually wins a couple more games in the tournament. Because that was a really, really tough game. Maryland, they pulled away late. Texas Tech, we all know how that went, where it was an incredible comeback for Florida. Then Auburn, similar type thing. They were down 9, I believe, early second half, and then come back and take control of the game, really, and end up pulling it out. Great game there. And now they have Houston. So I think just on the surface level, when looking at this game, these are 2 of the best teams we've seen in a long, long time.
Honestly, these are the 2. I mean, if you would have said early mid-March, like these were the 2. If you would have told me these were the 2 best teams in the country, right? Like at that time, based on where they were, I don't know if I would have disagreed with you.
Yeah, and they just beat the other team that you would throw in there, like Auburn and then Duke on the other side. Like this Final Four again has been outstanding, and it is the
Yeah.
four best teams of this year, and it's the four best
Mhm.
teams. It might be the four best teams of this decade, like since 2020.
Yeah.
Like it is an absolutely insane field. So we get to this point, and I think just on a general level, and then we can go macro from or micro from there.
Mhm.
My thing with Florida and why Florida continues to be the team to beat in this tournament right now is just because of Walter Clayton.
Mm.
Like it's that simple to me. Walter Clayton was the reason they were able to come back and beat Auburn. And I mean, Elijah Martin was great in that game, 17 points. And like they had even their bigs, they didn't score a ton, but I thought they did a really good job on Broome and some of the and Cardwell and some of these other bigs. Um, but at the end of the day, they have a scorer that at any given time can hit two straight threes or can get to the line. And he ends the
Mhm.
game with 34 points against Auburn on what is it, 11 of 18 shooting, 7 of 7 from the free throw line. He's been the best player in this tournament by a
Yeah.
wide margin. And for that reason, I'm concerned. Like, that's where you start when saying Florida is the team to be here. And this is why Florida slightly favors, just because they have this guy on their team.
Mhm.
And that's scary to me.
Yeah. I think for me, the one thing you needed, I think the one thing you've needed to beat Houston, but overall to win this national championship is NBA level talent. And either NBA level talent or just like the elite of the elite college basketball talent. So like you talk about Janai Broome, right? Walter Clayton gives you that. He is proven. I mean, he probably played his way into the lottery after this, at
Yeah,
least to the first round at the very
yeah,
least.
for sure.
Um, he's a bigger guard, so like physicality is not going to bother him, right? Auburn's a team that plays pretty good defense, so like he was able to get his shots off. The thing for me is going to be like you said, it starts and ends with him because like there's just he's making, I mean, again, I'm not going to be hyperbolic about it, but he's making college basketball Steph Curry stuff, right? Like
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
oh, that's good defense, doesn't matter. Like, oh, they got a double on him, doesn't matter. Like now back-to-back games where he's been the superstar and the guy that you feel like he's the one that you're going to remember from this tournament, right?
Can I throw a
Regardless of
stat?
who wins. What was
Yeah.
it?
Can I
Yeah, I was
throw a
going to say
stat out there?
whoever wins regardless, you're going to remember Walter Clayton going off and
Yes.
just hitting any shot that he put up in the final 2 minutes of a game.
Yeah. The stat I was just going to throw out there in
Yeah.
quad one games, they've played 20 quad one games, which is already absurd.
Insane.
But he is 39% from three on 167 attempts. Like that's the 20 toughest games they've played
Oh
this
my
year.
God.
He's still
Yeah.
39% from three
Yeah.
and just blowing teams out. And he's hit at least three threes in like I'm looking at it right now, like 9 of the last 10 games. Like
Yeah.
again, Tennessee, he in the SEC tournament, he goes for 22. He scored 20 plus in like 9 of the last 10 games. I just this is and the thing is Auburn's collapse. I don't want to say it was predictable, but you kind of laid it
Mhm.
out. Like this is a younger team. Maybe if they
When
face
they
some
were up 14, I wasn't predicting no collapse.
no, no,
When they
no,
were
no,
up
no.
14, I was like, all
No,
right,
yeah,
this
I
is a
thought it was
wrap.
over. But it's foreseeable that like, okay,
Yeah.
like when you look at the game, it's like the young team could fold.
Yeah.
Florida's not young.
Right.
That's the difference. And if Houston doesn't get to a better start, then I am actually very concerned here.
Yeah.
Because Florida's not a super strong starting team either, right? They fell behind
I was
Auburn,
about
they
to say
fell
they
behind
needed two
Texas Tech.
comebacks.
Yeah, even UConn wasn't strong early. So I do think the first 5 to 10 minutes of this game is huge for Houston to
Yeah.
kind of assert itself because as much as we like, they've had some comeback wins, I don't love Houston playing from behind.
Yeah.
Like that's not where I want them to be. I want them to be ahead and just strangle Florida and try to put all their attention on Walter Clayton and then kind of go from there. But Florida has size, and that's the second aspect of it is they are one of the bigger teams in the country, just like Duke.
Mhm.
Duke was huge, but Florida's
The
up there as
diff
well.
Yeah, the difference for me, the difference when it comes to Florida for me is I think I'm talking Florida versus Duke in terms of like obviously both really efficient offenses, really good out shooting teams, and can really get
Yeah.
their shot on the inside. I think the difference for me is that I think I'm more worried about the versatility in which Florida can space the floor, right? Like, they're almost as good as Duke. Let me see, they might be better than Duke as far as like the interior. 8th versus. Okay, no, Duke was a better interior team, but regardless, they're not bad interior
Duke
wise,
was,
right? They're
yeah, I mean,
similar to
so number
Oklahoma.
one and number two offenses up
Right,
in
right.
there. Yes.
I think Florida has more versus like they can go 5 out at times, right? They can just
Yeah.
straight up if they go
Hall,
if
Thomas
they go
Hall.
Haw and Condon together, like that's
Yeah.
two shooters on the outside, and all of a sudden, like, but then they also right they throw Chinaloo in there, and it's like okay, they got size, and so it's
Yeah.
like it's not a BYU where they're or Kentucky where they're just chucking shots. They can go either or. They have the Walter Clayton to go inside out, driving on the inside and then hitting the big shots. They have the Elijah Martin who's like insanely athletic and can get variety of shots. So that's the concern for me when you say because Duke, I feel like obviously Duke had a lot of shooters, but they were always going to at least keep Cayman Malawak in the game, right? So you knew there would be somebody on the inside and somebody to kind of give Tugler or Roberts somebody to guard on the inside. So it kind of I don't say limited them because they were great at it, but it still had they didn't really have that plan A, plan B. Florida's been so versatile offensively, while still let's mention the defense as well, still holding up their defensive end of the bargain. And that, yeah, like if Houston gets off to a slow start, I do wonder if they can pull something out similar that they did against Duke, because one, they have the closer in Walter Clayton. And like you said, they're also an older team that's done this, been there, done that, come from behind, done all these things. So they know how to close the door or, what things that need to be done to stop a comeback like that. So I'm very fascinated by this because, like you said, Houston's been undersized before. They were undersized last game. They've been undersized probably most of the season. It doesn't matter, right? They box out better than anyone. Other than last night, last night they shoot more better than almost better than anyone. So like if Milos, even if Milos Uzan doesn't play great again, I still think you trust Cryer. I still think you trust Emmanuel Sharp.
Yeah.
Juwan Roberts and Tugler, like the spirit of those guys on the inside, like they're gonna out hustle, they're gonna win the rebounding battle. I have no issue with that. But it's gonna come down to if they have another mishap defensively, like they did against Duke, where they're getting carved up in the half court and they're losing their assignments, they're doing X, Y, and Z, then we have a problem because I do feel more confident in Florida being able to close the door than I did with the Duke at the time.
Yes. This is a contrast in tempos as well.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Whereas Duke ran, but they were in the 100s in terms of tempo, like mid 100s.
Yeah.
Houston again is 360th in tempo. They play one of the slower tempos in the country, which honestly I thought they did against Duke. They kind of slowed them down, but Duke was just really, really good.
Right.
Florida is 59th in the country in tempo, 42nd just in offensive tempo, and they look to run, they look to push with Martin and Rich and Clayton and Richard.
Yeah.
It's an old team, it's a big team, it's a good team. I do think, just looking at it though, we've talked a lot about Florida. I think we've covered Florida well. Just Houston's path to winning to me is going to be the same thing. I'm not even going to say anything crazy right here. I'm just, the defense is going to slow down Florida enough. Even if it's not Clayton, Richard, Martin, and Mike Hall, physically, the way that they can bother those players, I think is going to matter. And they couldn't bother Cooper Flagg for most of the game until like the last 10 minutes. They did. They wore him down and eventually got to him. But early in the game, Cooper Flagg looked like Cooper Flagg, man. That dude is incredible. Cool. Con Knipple looked like an NBA player. Cool. In the last 10 minutes, they wear them down to that point. I don't even think they're going to need to wait 30 minutes to wear them down. I think they're going to get to Florida's body early and really slow down this thing and may say, Florida, all right, work your half-court offense against us. Clayton hit some tough threes. Cool. Everybody else, we are hitting you in the chest for 40 minutes here.
Yeah.
And let's see if you can do it. Because Duke is more talented, like top-end talent than Florida, but Florida has more experience. So are they prepared for that type of Houston game? I'd have to see it.
If Alex Condon and Will Richard combined for, 8 points again, like they did against Auburn, Houston wins that game. Like if they're going to need, Florida's going to need 2 or 3 other players to step up along with Clayton. Not saying, Clayton may have a 30-point game, but if he just has a 30-point game, I think Houston wins that, right? If Will Richard doesn't have 10, if Condon doesn't have 7, right?
Yeah.
I think Hall's gonna have to have a good game because I think he's gonna play a lot to kind of space the floor a little bit. Houston. I think I agree with you. Like Houston has the overall ability to disrupt Florida again because Florida. Let me see. I'm trying to think. They lost to or they. So they
Let's
beat
look at some of
Tennessee,
their
but
losses.
they've played.
Well,
They lost
they
Tennessee.
split with
They
Tennessee.
yeah they split with Tennessee. So again, like they, as we saw, Tennessee's a very similar style, but Houston we saw is the better version of that. Like,
Yes.
is
Substantially.
that enough to disrupt Florida? I think it will be too. I think Vegas has Florida -1 or 1.5.
Yeah, one.
Ken Palm has this as a 1-point game in favor of Houston. I think
Houston.
Torvik has a 3-point game in favor of Houston. So like this is insanely close. I'm very excited. I said we'd get 3 classic games, including, semis, including the finals. I think we will. I'm very, very happy with the way these semifinals went, just from a basketball perspective. And I think we're in for Samson hoisting his first national title and Houston's first national title.
Yeah, that's gonna be emotional for everybody if that happens, man.
Oh, yeah.
That guy
In San
again.
Antonio, the first job that he had after getting fired from Indiana was on the bench of the Spurs.
It's got to happen. After that last win, I was
Yeah.
like, it has to happen at this point.
Yeah.
This has to be it. Now, if they were going against anybody else that wasn't Florida or Duke, I
Right.
mean, they're even against Auburn. I would say it's like I feel great about it. I think they win. Like I'm gonna say that they win. I don't feel like I'm like super confident in it though. And I don't think anybody either side can say that they're super confident in this because we just saw how these first 2 Final Four games go. These are the best 4 teams we've seen in a long time. So any of them deserve to win this. If Florida wins, Walter Clayton probably hit a couple crazy shots. If Houston wins, LJ Cryer. Now, last thing, because we are running along.
Yeah, you're fine.
LJ Cryer can match Clayton to a degree.
Shot making, as far as outside shot making, yeah.
Cryer just hit 6 threes last game.
Yeah.
Against Duke, who's 6'5" across the board. So it's like, and then if Uzan has a game that is comparable, like there's paths to where I think 3-point shooting wise, Houston could even have more threes than Florida in this game. So I think the pace will be big, but ultimately I trust Houston's defense to get it done. But what a matchup.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I got my dates right on that San Antonio thing. So on February 22nd, 2008, Sampson was forced to resign from the NCAA allegations, which of course everything that he was found guilty of is legal now. So he resigned on the 22nd from Indiana. On March 8th, Sampson was hired in an advisory role by the San Antonio Spurs. So, dude, if he gets it done in the place that kind of got him back on his coaching feet after – at the time was somewhat of a death sentence to some degree. Storybook.
Yep. All right. We'll be back tomorrow morning, probably to recap it all and see
recap a win. Let's go.
Recap a win. Speaking into existence. Houston, get us on the board here. We're spoiled now if Houston gets done. That's Baylor, Houston.
We need Texas women or TCU. We need something. We need the women to catch up.
Yeah, we need the women to get back to where they were. Kim Mulkey, come on back. Coach UTSA, Kim. No, Karen already said she's not going anywhere. All these places linking Karen Aston to jobs. She's like, nope. I'm here.
We're
Love
good.
Karen. All right. Yeah. Thank y'all for joining us. Enjoy the game tonight. We will talk to y'all later.